Welcome to the Wareham Conservation Commission meeting of Wednesday on November 3rd, 2021. Before we start the hearings, I'm going to ask, is there anybody on the commission that is willing to do minutes? We can't get our minutes funded by the town anymore, and the alternative is to have Mr. Bichette write our minutes. Is there anybody here willing to take minutes from now on?
What if we took turns?
Can take turns, but if you take a look, my concern is that the minutes we do
Our legal documents.
are legal documents, and it takes a skill set to write them. I mean, I can easily write to say we had an open hearing, we had a discussion, we closed the hearing, we voted, and that was it, without any of the detail behind it that
That's
comes
the
with Mr.
question, is
Bichette's
How
reports.
much detail do we need?
To me, where we are now having another suit, we need to be as clear and concise with our minutes as possible. And I was asked by a town official to ask this body if there's anybody here willing to keep up with our minutes.
Oh, look at
Huh?
Can you finish this at the end?
Oh, I will, but I wanted to, in case somebody was willing to take minutes,
I think
thought
somebody
I'd
in the
tell them,
audience would like
Would
to.
anybody out there?
tell them,
Anybody want to take minutes?
You're here at enough meetings. Do you want to take?
I just wanted to, if someone was willing to do it, I need to let them know ahead of time that they would be doing minutes to start the meeting, as opposed to waiting till the end and they didn't take the notes they might need. Okay, I don't see.
And then we'd also have to go back for all the other,
Yes.
yeah, and watch all the tapes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a big
So,
job.
that was it. I was asked to ask, and the answer is that,
I
I'm
just
not
don't have
qualified.
time.
no, okay, understand. Now,
It'll
for the
take
public
days.
hearings, we have 2, 4, 7 being requested to be continued, so if you're here for these, we're not going to be speaking on them. They're the Mark Connolly for Shell Lane, his dock, the Railroad Corridor, Frank Tomatozzi for his pier, Christopher Foley for his pier, George Barrett for his land, the Wareham, Mass. 3 Atlantic Design Engineering for 99 Faring Hill Road, and a continuation for Wareham PV LLC.
And-
Just,
Sorry.
no, just so if anybody here that was wanting to speak to these projects, we're not going to be dealing with them, they're going to be continued. I didn't want people to sit through the whole meeting and saying, well, you didn't tell me ahead of time. So, please,
I have a question for
Yes.
you. And that is that who requested these continuances? It wasn't us who asked for continuances.
they came from the client.
They came from the client. And when did they call and cancel or continue?
Dave forwarded the emails to us with their request
I haven't
attached.
even had a
Okay,
chance
So
to
there's
sit and
there
read.
is some emails.
Today. They must
Came
have
today.
called today. So,
Now, if they're looking for continuances, do they have to show up to the meeting to see if we actually continue them?
you know,
They do not. They just assume it's going to be continued.
They request.
Okay. Sorry.
They request for
They request
continuance,
we continue, okay.
or they don't show. Most
Do
of the
they
time,
have-
they ask for a request, and there's no limit to how many times they can request a continuance.
And do they have to give a reason for it, or just request it and that's it?
Yes. Okay, please.
thank you. A
Oh,
notice.
sorry,
Oh,
we're all here.
notice of public hearing pursuant to the provisions of the Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act, General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Wareham Wetland Protection Bylaw, Division 6. A public hearing will be held in Room 320, Wareham Multi-Service Center, 48 Marion Road, Wareham, Mass., on Wednesday, November 3rd, 2021, at 6:30 p.m. On the request for determination of applicability for Sokon Chun, 53 Rose Point Ave, Wareham, Massachusetts, 02571, to construct a sunroom on an existing deck located on Assessor's Map 78-1, Lot 17, 53 Rose Point Avenue, Wareham, Massachusetts.
Yes, is there anybody here for this project? Please come forward and identify yourselves. We'll set They'll share.
You got a second one? Yeah, we'll take, here, I'll pass it down to you.
I'm Dana Ward, I'm the contractor. And these are the two owners.
Hi, I'm Benita.
Hello. So Quanchen.
Okay, please have a seat. Mr. Burchett will read to the project.
So the project site is at 53 Rose Point Ave, and the project involves the construction of a sunroom on an existing deck, which is in the buffer zone to Salt Marsh, and also within the riverfront area of the Sippican River. So there's a 12 by 24-foot sunroom being proposed on the deck of the same size. So there's no expansion in footprint. The only work that would be required is new footings as required by the building inspector to support the room. So 4 footings would be proposed that would be hand dug. This is rather close to the water, but again, this deck is currently existing in that location. And as I'm told, all the work is going to be done by hand.
Yes.
Okay, and what are the size and nature of the footings?
They're probably about the same size as what's there. The only difference is that we have to put a big foot at the bottom, and we may very well dig up what's there, and they might meet the existing, but there's no proof of that. So the most we'd be digging is a hole is like 14 inches by 14 inches.
Okay, I didn't have any further questions, and again, this is basically in the same footprint as what currently exists. So I would recommend the issuance of a negative determination number 2 to approve the project.
Thank you. Questions around the board? Carol?
Are you planning to use sonnet tubes?
Yes.
That's all. Thank you.
Ron?
Is this gonna be like a, is this gonna be an all-seasons room, or is this just like a 2 seasons, 3 seasons? Is it gonna be heated?
It's not going to be heated, no.
Okay, is it gonna be, so, is it gonna be enclosed, as in you're gonna come out a door and into the room? Is that, it's not
Yes.
part of the
there's
actual living space?
Yeah, there's existing slider that's currently there, and those are going to stay there.
Okay, that's it.
Michael?
I have no questions, thank you.
Denise?
Are the metal columns that are already there, are they being replaced, or are you going to stay
Yes, no, they're being replaced.
with
The same thing.
same
It's
thing?
same thing.
And then underneath the deck, is that going to stay pervious as it is now, or are you planning anything underneath the deck?
No, currently, we're not planning anything underneath deck. It'll be pervious.
Okay. And by the stairs, you wanted,
Oh, well,
are you doing anything to the stairs?
Nope, the existing stairs are staying where they are.
Existing stairs, okay, thank you.
Elisa?
nothing.
Kwame?
No questions, thanks.
I was just very nice to have a clear access to the river, but that was not part of the project. Anybody in the audience would like to speak on this project at 53 Rose Point Ave? I'm seeing none.
Motion to close the hearing.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to close the hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained. The hearing is closed.
I make a motion to approve the project with a negative determination 2.
Second.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained. We're done. And Dana, I miss Joe Liggett too. We
Yes, I
all
do, very much,
We all
very
do.
much. I miss my rides to North Carolina with him. He had a unique perspective, but he loved the town of Wareham.
And he was a great addition to this commission.
Yeah, nice guy.
Thank you. Before you start any work, see Mr. Bichette to make sure the paperwork is completed for you.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Good
Have a
night.
good evening. Did both come back?
Yes.
Okay. Okey dokey. Next, please.
Notice of public hearing pursuant to the provisions of the Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act, General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Wareham Wetland Protective Bylaw, Division 6. A public hearing will be held in room 320, Wareham Multi-Service Center, 48 Marion Road, Wareham, Mass., on Wednesday, November 3rd, 2021, at 6:30 p.m. on the notice of intent for LSC Hydra LLC, care of GAF Engineering, Inc., 266 Main Street, Wareham, Mass., 02571, to construct a ground-mounted solar array located on Assessor's Map 104, Lot 1046, VB and VC, 36, 44, and 48 North Carver Road, Wareham, Mass.
Thank you. For those presenting the project, please identify yourself for the record.
Madam Chair, Bob Rogers with GAF Engineering.
Dan Watson, I'm representative of LSC Hydra.
And Linda Rinta, I'm the owner of the property.
Thank you, Mr. Bichette. We'll read to the property, to the project. Boy, I'm starting off.
Okay, so the project site is 36, 44, and 48 North Carver Road. The project involves the construction of a commercial solar array within Riverfront area and within the buffer zone to bordering vegetated wetland. A 990 kilowatt ground-mounted solar array is proposed within the buffer zone to bordering vegetated wetland and within the riverfront area of the Weewannick River. The solar panels are proposed to be placed in 3 separate locations on the property, as indicated on the site plan. This would require work within approximately 188,000 square feet of riverfront area, as the Weewannick River runs along the entire length of this property. There would be a 7 to 8 foot high perimeter fence around the solar areas. So I did have a question if this was to be fenced around the entire site or just the solar array areas. Also, what if any amount of tree clearing would be needed for the project? The project would also be reviewed by the town engineer to determine if the project meets stormwater standards. We did not get a DEP file number for the project at this time, so I would recommend a continuance of the hearing to the next meeting for that additional information.
I'm writing as fast as I can. Bob, anything to add?
Hold on, just before you speak, Bob. I just do want to make the commission aware and the public. I do serve on the Solar Bylaw Committee with the applicant, but it will have no bearing on the decisions that I make to this project, but I just wanted to make that known.
Thank you.
Okay, so yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So just to answer a couple of David's questions first, so we do have 3 separate solar arrays, just under 10 acres of the 49-acre parcel, and so they're all roughly 3 acres, let's say, but so they would be individually fenced so that there would be access between those, both for vehicles for the agricultural operation as well as for wildlife. So this is not a situation where the entire property would be fenced in. There is no tree clearing associated with this. There are portions of the property that have been cleared several years ago, and one of the solar arrays is basically being put on overgrown blueberry bushes, so those blueberry bushes would have to come out. With respect to Charlie Rowley's review, we've had one public hearing with the planning board and have not, excuse me, I've not seen a review letter from him. The grading and the drainage system on this project is really quite minimal. We're really just having to, on the very northernmost array, where we're needing to put some shallow basins to make up for the new gravel access roads. And understanding, that we don't have a DEP file number, certainly we do expect to continue tonight. I would point out to the commission, with the notice of intent, we've provided a project narrative and riverfront alternatives analysis. We've addressed the resource area presumptions of significance. So we have we have a written assertion of compliance with the Act regarding the private and public water supply, protection of groundwater, providing flood control, preventing pollution, protecting land containing shellfish, wildlife habitat, and protecting fisheries. And there's a summary at the end. In terms of the riverfront area alternatives analysis, I'm sure Dan and Linda will go into it a little bit more, but so essentially you've got this agricultural piece of land with productive areas for cranberries and non-productive areas, one being a cranberry bog and the other being the blueberry bush area. And then the area to the north is, again, previously disturbed riverfront area from a tree logging operation to sell the wood, again, in financial support of the agricultural use. And so we feel that within those riverfront areas, having the benefit of the solar project, funding the change in ground cover, that we can improve the ground cover from its current state with pollinators and she's growing beach grass. Again, I think Linda is a little more fluent in that, but essentially the unproductive areas of the property right now are the areas that are closest to the Wewianick River. And so if you consider the alternative of moving the solar away from the river, it would basically take away the productivity of the wetland cranberry bogs. And so she'd be forced to resurrect the agricultural use within those riverfront areas in order to maintain it as a family farm. And so with that, I guess I would just turn it over to Linda or Dan for their comments.
The upland cranberry bog, and I think I can demonstrate, and I know we're going to be continued, and this is prior disturbed. It was planted in about 1980. I think I have pictures of it in 1985. We did not build a true upland bog because we didn't know at the time how to build a wetland in an upland. We simply removed the trees, we removed the topsoil, we removed the gravel. We traded gravel for the excavation work and had planted in sand. It's been poorly performing, and it doesn't hold water. It is up against the river, and to tell you the truth, we built a sustainability plan for our property, which is not a big farm, it's a small farm. And part of that was to move our productive acres off the river and back across the street. And we got permission from Ocean Spray to make that swap, where we could move our productive acres. And right now, we're farming that, we're harvesting on it, we apply herbicides and pesticides and fertilizer. The only water, the only hydrology there is what we put on it. We pump it up, and I know, Dave, you've been out there. The only hydrology that is on there is when we pump it on there, and it doesn't last. And so I think that I can make a convincing case that what we're going to make is something better, better for the river resource, by moving our productive acres away from the river is going to be an improvement. By putting in topsoil and being able to restore vegetation, a natural base to the ground, and our intent is to build pollinator habitat. It's what I do for USDA. I write pollinator plans. We need pollinators, and we would plant pollinator plants between the rows and between the panels. So I think that overall our habitat will be enhanced. I'm sure you may have other questions, but I think that we can demonstrate that we're going to restore a previously disturbed area and create a better protection for the river resource.
Thank you. Dan?
I'll leave it to questions to the board,
Okay.
the commission, and I would just say, this is a good project. It's nice to be able to do a project where we don't have to clear any trees or create any new disturbed area. And it's an exciting project for me, and those are hard to find nowadays for solar. And
And confirm, what's the size? How many killer?
999 kilowatts, about just under 1 megawatt.
One.
So it's on the smaller side, I would say, probably compared to what else you have.
Questions, Kwame?
Yeah, did you say that you had a watershed analysis or nothing yet on that? The watershed?
Well, we did a stormwater report.
Oh, you did, okay.
Yes,
Yeah.
and so the, on the southern array, just simply by splitting the solar array with the gravel road, it reduces the amount of runoff that would head toward the wetland system and the Wewianick River. Mr. Rowley hasn't completed his review yet, but there's nothing that we need to do on the middle array. It's just going to be over the unproductive cranberry bog, and we simply close off one of the interconnections to another cranberry bog, and the water stays in that area. And then we just have grading for a couple of shallow infiltration basins on the northern array, and that's it. So we're not really creating any new discharges, but we do need to hold back some stormwater on the northern array due to the addition of the gravel roads.
Okay, and one more question too. The battery packs that you're gonna be stored for that power, where those are gonna be stored?
So if you, there's a, he's gonna point to it. I actually circled it for the planning board meeting. And so there's an equipment pad that is gonna be installed just to the south of the existing space metal building.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
I couldn't see them, I don't have my glasses. And one more other question too is the roadway path. I mean, I know, basically with fire trucks and all that other good stuff, I mean, is that road gonna be bigger or smaller? Where's that gonna go? And
So I think we'd originally proposed to mostly reuse the existing roads. They're fairly wide. I think we probably had a couple meetings with the fire department, and they've asked us to add roads in between the arrays, just so they have closer access to all of the panels. So that's why you see the additional roads going through the middle of the
I
arrays.
gotcha.
That wasn't our first
Yeah.
design. But the primary access point for construction, everything will be on their existing farm roads.
They provided a comment letter to the planning board. I think it would be available to view on the website under the planning board documents.
okay. Yep, that's it, thank you.
Elisa?
I just have a couple of questions. How high are these solar panels? How far are they off the ground? And
So this is a low-profile system, and so the panel height would be shown on probably the last detail sheet. So they each have one of these. So it's 3.5 feet at the front of the panel, and just under 9 feet on the back of the panel. So these won't be very visible at all from Route 58. I think we're discussing screening with the planning board by placing some blueberry bushes along North Carver Road, I think just for that section of panels, the southernmost.
I was going to bring up blueberries.
Yes.
Is there any way that, I mean, I think it would be great if we got some blueberries back in the area, if you have to.
Well, we will put blueberry bushes on the outside of the fencing to shield the fencing, and of course, our neighbors can come and pick. I've had a you-pick blueberry patch there for over 50 years. But I have to tell you honestly, that dog won't hunt anymore. They put blueberries on the market at 2 for 1 the day we opened to pick. I can't pay labor, we have to spray. Now we have 2 new pest insects that come into blueberries. I can't spray and have people pick. We've tried that and it just doesn't work. So we're going to continue, we'll move our blueberry bushes to the outside edge, around the outside of the fence. So they're available for wildlife and for our neighbors. But other than that, we're not doing blueberries anymore.
Anything else?
Not yet, thank you.
Denise?
All right, so my understanding is this is not coming in as a dual-use project.
It's not dual use by the SMART program because frankly, that requires the panels to be raised 10 feet high.
Right.
I don't need to do that. It is going to be dual use. In fact, the benefit to me with this particular solar developer is that they allow me to go in and dual use it. I'm going to grow beach grass and I'm going to grow pollinator plants, which I distribute for pollinator habitat, and I will also put in my own pollinator habitat and my bees. I also keep bees, and we bring in pollinators during pollination season, and we can put them inside the fence. But it's not a traditional smart plan dual use.
Okay. My other question is, the poles that you'll be utilizing, what are they going to be made out of? Because I know there was an issue with putting the steel poles into a bog area because of the peat depth or something along
There's
that
no peat on
line?
this bog.
There's no peat on this bog at all. So there's no issue with using the metal poles?
No.
No pressure-treated wood?
This will look pretty much like the solar at Tow Road.
And
Tow Road near
Target?
Walmart and Lowe's.
Yeah,
The-
okay. The poles,
They won't be wood,
No.
pressurized wood.
no pressurized wood, no treated wood, no leaching. Is there any work that's going to be done within a 50-foot no-activity zone?
We've avoided the 50-foot no-activity zone.
That
And
yet, or no?
is that
There's no work in
activity
the-
within the
correct.
no-activity zone, okay. Because our bylaws don't differentiate between upland and lowland bog, it just states bog. But this is not coming in as a dual use. So I have to try and understand how our bylaw on a bog affects this, or if it affects it at all. You're abandoning the blueberry field, you're abandoning the bog, and you're using an area that already was cleared.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Michael?
All right, just a couple of things here. This bog's in close proximity to another one we're dealing with. I understand this is like completely different, though. Is all this land in the town of Wareham, or is this partially
No,
in one town?
it's all in Wareham.
It's all in Wareham. Okay, number one. Let's see. Then another one I think I got to deal with, and another one rather is this bordering on the Wewianick River, or is this like just off the floodplain, or how close is this to the Wewianick River?
Well, there's 100-foot and 200-foot riparian zones shown on the plans. We had a wetland scientist flag the mean annual high water line of the Wewianick River, and we located that. So all that information you can see on the plans, on the existing conditions plans and on the proposed.
All right.
I'd like the idea of reusing an area, moving a bog away from the river, therefore reducing the amount of pesticides that will be displayed or used on that property. That's a great plus for the Wewiantics, is to have that moved out.
Sandy, that actually came out as a result of a conversation with Mark Rasmussen several years ago. I worked on a project with him where we mapped the cranberry bogs in the Buzzards Bay, in the whole Buzzards Bay drainage basin, and tried to come up with improvement plans for all of those that had flow-throughs. But at that particular time, we talked about ways to finance whatever ways we could to move bogs off the river, move them away from the river.
And that's what you're doing here.
That's what I'm trying to do.
Yes. By allowing that land to be used as a solar field with your planting of the pollinators and beach grass.
Yes. On this particular farm, we don't have a space to waste. We're not a big farm. And this is a way that we can continue farming.
Very good. Anybody else has a question before I ask the public?
Nope, they covered it.
Oh, that's right, I didn't come to this side. Ron,
Do you feel
this is a
forgotten?
bad start for me. Okay, Ron,
So, I'm just looking here, just for clarification, so, can you hear me now?
Turn yourself on.
Now I'm on. Good, perfect. So, I'm looking at the plan that you have there on the board, but then I'm looking through this plan, and it looks like there's more solar arrays here on this plan that I'm looking at than what's on that board.
That's the overview plan, sheet 3, you know, and then to provide detail, we enlarge the plans. And so there's
'Cause
basically...
I see 5 different fields on the plan that I'm looking at.
What page?
Yeah, well,
What
so that plan shows the other sheets that are blow-ups of the arrays.
Okay, I just
So
wanted-
there's some overlap
Okay,
on
yeah.
those bigger sheets, that's
Okay.
all.
I just want to make sure that I'm clear on what I'm looking at so that is the overview of
That's the...
3 arrays, but this is broken down to show 5.
Well, it's showing the 3 arrays, but there's some overlap on the sheets.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, just because I just want to make sure that I'm clear on that. I mean, I'm excited that we could, you know, move a bog to eliminate some of the pesticide activities that, you know, happen, especially near the river. But I'm sure as we go along and we dig more into this, I'll have more questions, but I just wanted to make sure that I was clear on what I'm looking at here and what you're presenting there is basically the same thing. So that's it
Thank
for
you.
now.
Carol?
No questions.
Yes?
Bob, I wanted to ask, on your project narrative, Riverfront alternatives analysis, I don't really see much in there for an alternatives analysis. Am I not seeing something, or is there a page missing? Because I really don't see any alternatives.
Well, there's really only one other alternative, which would be to move the panels out of the riverfront area entirely, which would basically destroy the viability of the productive bogs. You know, what you see on the plan is what they have for land, and so there are no, you know, we're using previously disturbed areas that aren't currently productive and would cost money to be made, you know, productive for agriculture. You know, you need to have the partnership between the solar company and the landowner. So, you know, I know you can say, well, so is there some other off-site place that you could put solar? Well, sure, there's some other property owner, some other off-site, but it's not a
Well,
viable
that's what I'm
alternative.
getting at. That has to be in your alternatives analysis. You can't just say, I'm not going to do that.
So, well, so they have an agreement with Eversource, you know, which Dan can speak to. You know, and so, you know, is there another project that would be suitable to the landowner that would, you know, make the, we really only
I'm
have.
not saying that there is an alternative. What I'm saying
Yeah.
is you have to make that statement in your alternatives analysis, which you don't do at this point.
Yeah, I think we would like to come back with a more detailed alternative analysis. I think we recognized we need a little bit more beef in there, so happy to
Okay.
do that, and we'll get that to you shortly.
That was my only point. Thank you.
Is there anybody in the audience who would like to speak to this project or comment on it? Yes, please come forward and identify yourself. Bob will give up his chair for you.
Okay. I'm Bill Madden from GAF Engineering. Just on the alternatives analysis, just for clarity in the office, the alternatives analysis, I mean, there's a large majority of the site is previously disturbed riverfront area. And there's a large portion of the project with the restoration activities and what have you that would be allowed under the provisions of the redevelopment of the previously altered riverfront area. So I just have a question on with respect to the alternatives analysis. Is it suitable for the commission to evaluate the riverfront analysis only for the portion of the riverfront area which is not considered redevelopment area? So there's a small portion that is not redevelopment area, but like when the cranberry bogs were created, where the airport runway was made out there, you know, the trees were cut, the stumps were removed, the gravel was removed, the topsoil is gone, and if you read the section on redevelopment, you know, one of the areas that they consider as prior disturbed riverfront areas if the topsoil has been removed. So obviously with the cranberry bog construction and the other activities that have taken place on that site over the years, that topsoil has been removed. So I think that, at least from my point of view, I'd be looking at it from a perspective that we have really two separate portions of riverfront area. We have a riverfront area that may not be considered previously disturbed and not considered as part of redevelopment, and a portion that is redevelopment. Redevelopment, in my opinion, first sentence says, notwithstanding the provisions of the riverfront area. So that means, in spite of what is stated in the prior document, that we can go directly to the redevelopment portion. So I just wanted a little clarity on that so I can help with that in the office, and I think it's just really a question that I have.
I'm going to pass it to Dave.
Yeah, I would say that the plan would have to call out those areas that you are saying is previously disturbed and what isn't, and then we would have to review and see if we agree or disagree with that, and then the riverfront analysis can be, or alternatives can be based off of that. But at this point, I don't think we have that type of detail submitted.
No, I just,
Yeah.
just clarity on that, and that's fine. That's exactly what I was trying to get to the bottom of, and that's perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. And seeing no one else, you're looking for a continuation until November 17th. Is that good?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Second.
Motion to continue to November 17th.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstain. See you on the 17th.
Thank you.
Thank you.
With a new redevelopment riverfront study or something.
Alternatives analysis.
Thank you. I have to get the right words. Alternative analysis. Thank you.
Seawall, this is the seawall.
I am.
See that?
We have a
Have it if
notice
you
of
want it.
public hearing. Pursuant to the provisions of the Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act, General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Wareham Wetland Protective Bylaw, Division 6, a public hearing will be held in Room 320, Wareham Multi-Service Center, 48 Marion Road, Wareham, Mass., on Wednesday, November 3rd, 2021, at 6:30 p.m. On the notice of intent for Deborah Koshivas, trustee, the 76 Pinehurst Realty Trust, care of J.C. Engineering, Inc., 2854 Cranberry Highway, East Wareham, Mass. 02538, to install a sheet pile seawall, deck, and stairway located on Assessor's Map 46A-1, Lot 33 and 34A, 76 Pinehurst Drive, Wareham, Mass.
Thank you. To speak to the project, please identify yourself.
Good evening, Brad Bertolo, JC Engineering.
Thank you. Great pictures with the notice of intent.
Thank you.
Very, I didn't even have to go, it matched everything I saw, so.
I remember this one.
All set. Sorry. Should have
That's
said
all
Mr.
right.
Chet.
So the project site is at 76 Pinehurst Drive, and the project involves the reconstruction of a seawall at this site and the construction of a deck. And this is in the buffer zone to coastal beach and salt marsh. So there's an existing concrete wall that's in a state of decay. Much of it is already collapsed. And the intent is to reconstruct a vinyl sheet pile-driven wall to replace that existing deteriorating wall, which is approximately 60 feet in length. And also proposed is to construct a deck in the buffer zone to the coastal beach as well. This would be in the 30-foot no activity zone. They are stating that there was previously a deck there. I had some questions about that and what the size and nature of the deck was, because currently there's nothing there, but there clearly is some old footings, if you will, that indicate there was something there, but the information wasn't clear as to what the size that was versus what's being proposed now. So the vinyl sheets would be driven from the upland side of the property. And initially, the plan shows that that sheet pile wall would be driven in front of what's left of the original wall, but there's such a small amount of the original wall still up that it's my recommendation to just remove what's left and put the new wall in the same line as what the old wall was, so therefore it's not encroaching further out into the beach. And I had this discussion with Brad earlier. So that's basically what the nature of the project is. We did not get a DEP file number yet for this project. We did get comments from Mass Division of Marine Fisheries that had no concerns about it, but I would recommend that the hearing be continued for the DEP file number and to address some of the other questions that I brought up.
Brad, comments, please.
Thank you. I did speak with the agent today and felt it was necessary to meet to go over the project as opposed to continuing in case there were some plan changes. I'd like to pass around some old field cards from the assessing office that shows the original size of the deck. I do call it out on plan. So I think there's only like 5 copies there, so you might have to share. In regards to the deck, there is a existing concrete footing that would be removed, and in its place, we're proposing to install 3 sonotubes. Due to the original size being 10 by 14 with 140 square feet, we're proposing to build the same size deck, just not as deep, to match the 140 square feet. We're anticipating 5 sonotubes as part of that project, and 3 of them would be directly in the location of that existing footing. I'm assuming that footing doesn't meet frost protection, so it would have to be removed. It'd be nice to build on top, but I doubt that it meets the frost protection. In regards to the sheet piles, the design we came up with was trying to limit the amount of disturbance and excavation needed to remove concrete. There are 2 sizable pieces that are laying in the beach at the moment, and we anticipate those to be removed. Those are about right in the middle of the project. The portion of the concrete seawall that's existing that's towards the southern side of the property, or southeastern side, it's in decent shape. It doesn't have adequate footing depth, and it's starting to erode underneath it. That's probably obviously due to storm events, but there's also a drainage pipe that runs from the catch basin in the street and discharges directly out into the coastal beach. So the owner has seen that there's been some erosion taking place due to that. The remaining portions of the concrete seawall are starting to fail, but we felt that to limit the amount of excavation needed, it would be more beneficial to drive the sheet piles in front and avoid that disturbance. I just have a feeling that once you start taking out the concrete wall, you're going to start to lose some of the material behind it. So it's not just removing concrete, you're also removing material to put an adequate back slope on it so that, it's safe to install the sheet piles. I also want to run one other option by this commission. After speaking to the property owner today, she said at least one estimate on the install, and she discussed with me the option of eliminating the bulkhead and having some type of temporary self-supported steps seaward of the sheet pile wall. It's my understanding that maybe not being supported by the beach, but some type of aluminum, lightweight, bracketed at the top, bracketed down bottom, structure that could be removed off-season or, during storm events, just to eliminate the need to excavate out the concrete that's in the current stairwell and provide a straight seawall. It's an option that's not obviously shown on this plan, but we wanted to run it by this commission to see if that would be permittable by this commission. Property owners is trying to lessen the amount of cost to her. And I'm fully aware that we have to continue it tonight, but I felt that I'd like to present this to you guys and see if I can receive any comment before next meeting.
Thank you. Questions? Carol?
The stairwell, the stairs, you want to put in aluminum? Is that what you're considering, if allowed?
Currently, we're proposing either a wood or aluminum stairs set within a bulkhead that's set in the location of the current steps. The alternative that I'd like to present is that the sheet pile is straight across, and we don't have that bulkhead area constructed. And then on the outside of the wall, we propose to bracket and support a set of aluminum steps. Wood would be too heavy, but aluminum would be lightweight. Again, it's something that's been done in the neighborhood, although I'm not sure if it's been permitted that way. But we want to see if it's permittable by this commission.
Okay, thank you.
Ron?
So if I'm just looking at this sheet that you gave us from the town, so I'm assuming that looking at what they have here, I mean, it doesn't have a date of when that was done, but the WDK, I'm assuming that's the deck that was originally there.
Yeah.
Is there a date when that?
It's fiscal year 2010 is when that was. I don't know. Obviously, this house has been in the process of being remodeled. I'm not sure, the outside is obviously not entirely complete. Current property owners.
So the question, how did you get the deck without conservation approval?
Correct.
Oh, I thought,
It was purchased in 2009 by the current property owner, and
'Cause I
obviously
see,
it was removed.
Yeah.
Because fiscal year 2010, so 2010, it was shown on that size.
Because I see, the only thing that I see here is the building permit record was 1999 for the deck.
I
Shed in
didn't look
2000.
into that. It could have been the side porch, the side deck. I don't know.
I just want to have full understanding of everything that I'm looking at without, without trying to dig too deep, but I just see just a couple of things that kind of throw me off with dates and whatnot, but that's a small thing. Yeah, that's the only thing I have right now. Obviously, we know we have to be continued because of the DEP file number, which will give us obviously more time to kind of look at things a little bit more, but I was just curious based on what I was looking at, and, so that's it for now.
Michael?
My big concerns right now are the stairs, but those have already been addressed at the moment. Thank you.
Denise?
Looking at this walkway that they're planning on putting in, that's going to be a brick walkway going around, not pervious, I'm assuming.
Something that would be suitable to walk on. They do have pervious pavers, which, the kind of interlocking blocks, but leave space.
I don't recall seeing that.
It's basically like it looks like a patio block, you just don't.
They
Remember seeing
exist.
it?
Yeah, they don't lock in, they just kind of sit on almost like a stone dust type base, and then there's just brick that goes over the
Yeah.
top.
I didn't-
It's really nice, it's
They're
expensive, but it's nice.
Yeah.
Couldn't you also just use like a flagstone piece which has bluestone around it, so it's got a walking pavers, but there's, everywhere around it is pervious.
Grass or something like that.
No, just even the
Stones,
walkway,
They do stones and stuff around.
Yeah.
Denise, did you have anything else?
Yes, I'm not sure, I want to completely understand what I'm looking at here. This dark black line that says erosion control line, what is that?
We anticipate that some of the work as shown on this plan, to remove concrete that's laying on the beach. Has the potential of disturbing the soil. So we're proposing, there's a detail right in the center of the plan, straw wattle and silt fence to kind of protect
While you're working.
while that excavation takes place.
Quite sure what that was. And this wouldn't be like a candidate just to put like, we saw one wall somewhere, these large boulders along, and just build a boulder wall instead of going through all this sheet metal and another concrete wall that's probably just gonna wash away again?
Well, that's the reason why we're not moving forward with a concrete wall. It is consistently in this neighborhood concrete, and the neighbors are starting to turn over into sheet pile. We didn't look at the stone revetment as that option. They typically require a larger footprint because they have a back slope to them. We thought this would be
More conducive to the area?
more conducive to the area, but also require less excavation. That was the whole purpose of
And they're not
driving.
planning on taking down any of the trees or anything that are back there?
We're not anticipating tree removal, although I feel there'd be some branches needed to the northern section of the property. There are a couple terraces leading from the backyard level, right behind the house. One has 3 terraces total. The lower terrace has a number of small saplings, smaller trees in that area that I think once the sheet piles are stood up, that the branches would be in the way. I don't think we can pull them back, but they could be trimmed.
Okay. And all this work is being done within no activity zone, correct?
All this area, yes, correct. It's
Activity zone, okay. Thank you.
Elissa,
None.
Kwame,
No questions, thank you.
all right. My turn. I was extremely disturbed by the 2 large drain pipes catching the water off the roof and dumping it onto the water into the river. I'm going to suggest that we have some dry wells installed to take the roof runoff, as opposed to, as you said, the one on the northern side was eating away at the existing concrete because of the amount of water coming off the roof. Did I understand that?
No, I was describing the amount of erosion on the beach due to the street drainage that runs through this property.
But I'm sure the 2 pipes leaving his house are not helping that condition. So I'm saying that's number 1. I would like to see dry wells to take the roof runoff. And again, I'm going to comment, it's nice there's no existing salt marsh in front of this house, just like we saw on Rose Point. Just amazing how many people now have easy access to the river without their salt marsh. I don't know who did it, but someone down the line made a nice little path for themselves. But not part of this discussion, just a comment on me that, never mind. So we're looking at a large patio block from the front of the house to the side deck, to the front deck with steps. The deck being proposed is about the same size that existed, just a different configuration.
Yes.
Because right now, there's a set of sliders off this house that go nowhere, and that's not safe.
No.
So they're looking at putting a deck underneath their existing sliders for a safety reason and easy access to the outside of the house, as opposed to, right? There were sliders there, weren't there, on the house?
I don't recall it being a slider, just
It was the
Door?
Just a
Yeah,
door.
Just a door.
But there was access at one time to this deck that no
Right.
longer exists.
Correct. It
Yeah.
looked like there
It
were
had a
steps
step
coming,
down,
a step
step
down
down.
coming out, and you can see the
So-
piece of concrete at the end of it.
That was my comment on the site. Is there anybody here that wants to speak to this project? I'm seeing none. If we continue, would 11:17 be good?
That's acceptable, yes.
Motion to continue the hearing to 11:17.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained. We're continued until the 17th.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Notice of public hearing pursuant to the provisions of the Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act, General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Wareham Wetland Protection Bylaw, Division 6. A public hearing will be held in room 320, Wareham Multi-Service Center, 48 Marion Road, Wareham, Mass., on Wednesday, November 3rd, 2021, at 6:30 p.m. On the notice of intent for David Andrade, care of Field Engineering Company, Inc., P.O. Box 1178, Mattapoisett, Mass. 02739, to construct a roadway to service a proposed 6-lot residential subdivision with associated stormwater management system located on a map 41, lot 1019, 69 Great Neck Road, Wareham.
Thank you. Please identify yourself representing the project.
Rich Riccio from Field Engineering on behalf of the applicant.
Rich?
Riccio, R-I-C-C-I-O.
Thank you. Mr. Bichette will read to the project.
Okay, so this project location is at 69 Great Neck Road, and this project involves the construction of a subdivision roadway with associated grading and stormwater structures in the buffer zone to Coastal Bank and Salt Marsh on the other side of Great Neck Road. So a portion of this proposed roadway and stormwater drainage structure is in the buffer zone to the wetland that exists on the other side of the street. The majority of the site where the rest of the subdivision would be is outside of the 100-foot buffer zone and outside of the flood zone. So what we're dealing with is just a certain portion of that subdivision roadway that happens to be in the buffer zone to that resource area that's on the other side of the street. At this point, this project does need to have review from the town engineer, which has not been completed as of this point, so I would be recommending that the hearing be continued. The road layout is staked out at the site in terms of where that center line of the road would be, and the stormwater drainage basin is down closer toward Great Neck Road because that is sort of the lower point of the site. And again, it would be for a 6-lot subdivision. We did get a DEP file number for this project, but again, at this point, I would recommend the hearing be continued until we get comments from the town's engineer on this project.
Rich, you anything to add?
No, just, we understand the need for the continuance and take, I have no problem with that. We are going to be opening the public hearing with the planning board on Monday, the 8th, to discuss the Form C subdivision. As your agent mentioned, there's just a small portion of the roadway that's located within the buffer zone to the wetland system across the street, and as well as the stormwater management facility, which the stormwater system was designed in accordance with the standards of the state and the town's rules and regs with regards to TSS removal and recharge requirements, which will all be reviewed by Mr. Rowley. And the only other resource area is it's a portion of the roads is within the flood zone, the coastal storm flowage to the wetlands across the street in the salt marsh.
You have a retention basin there?
We are proposing an infiltration basin at the southwesterly side of the roadway. Currently, the whole site drains to the road. There's a small depression there now, so I don't believe any water actually leaves this site. It gets onto the road, and our stormwater calcs have been prepared and show that there's no increase in the water leaving the site in post-developed conditions.
Questions? Kwame?
No questions at this time.
Alyssa?
I just am not yet ready, thanks.
Denise?
What's the pink line?
The pink line here, that's the flood zone line.
That's the flood zone
Yeah,
line. And the
yeah.
yellow is,
The yellow is the buffer zone to the wetlands across
buffer
the
zone, okay.
approximate buffer zone.
okay,
And then there's some the green lines on the plan are the erosion controls we're proposing.
okay,
Silt fence, I think it's a silt fence on hay bale line or straw wattle line
okay.
at the limits of work. We're also proposing to put silt sacks in the existing catch basins for during construction to minimize any sedimentation into the roadway drainage system.
Thank you.
Denise?
I did it already. That was me.
I've all of a sudden become,
Michael?
I've all of a sudden become Denise now?
I'm sorry. I told you this was going to be a tough night for me.
Next thing you know, I'm going to become Kwame, I guess, I don't know. But anyway, just a couple of questions here. So we're just dealing with the road here, and we're not dealing with like the houses or anything of that nature this time? Is that correct?
Not at this time.
Okay, so now the road does run through a wetland, is that correct?
Just the flood zone, it's not within any wetland resource area. It's within the 100-year flood. But there's no, there's no change in elevation or flood storage or anything as part of this that would be proposed.
Okay, and also I noticed on the picture as well, looking at the picture on the left-hand side, there's also a cranberry bog and like one or two ponds to the left of that. The water will not flow into any of those?
No. If there was any water that would leave the site, it would get into the roadway drainage system.
Roadway drainage
Yes.
system.
There's a catch basin right on the side of the road, basically adjacent to where our stormwater basin is, and the overflow would go to that catch basin if it would overflow, but it has been designed to retain the
Can I ask a
storm
question?
events.
When was the last time that catch basin was cleaned?
I would have to defer to the town on that one.
No, but you need
Yeah.
to protect that area, because if it's overflowing like many of them are, it's going to affect the people across the street. And, they already have all their houses up high and all that. But you almost, I think, have to overbuild your water direction.
And that's why this has been sized through the 100-year storm event, and would be maintained in accordance with the rules and regs, as well as in cooperation with the town on the drainage system.
I still think it should be bigger, only because 100-year there, the water just flows right back from the ocean.
It is very close to that cove, a bay, it's very, very close to the water, the road, I mean.
Well, it goes into a marsh before it
The
really
marsh,
gets into open water.
The site itself, in the 100-year storm event, would be underwater by the flood itself. So the basin itself, while it does retain a 100-year storm, in dry conditions, it would already be underwater. And that's a coastal flood zone where there's really no ability to do compensatory storage for the flood of the harbor and the ocean.
Okay.
All right, that's all at this time.
Anything else, Mike?
No, that's all, thank you.
Ron?
Are you trying to hide under that?
Looking at the retention infiltration basin and all the drains going into it.
Yeah.
I'm probably getting ahead of myself, but is this going to be town sewer or is this going to be septic?
These would be septics, yes. So they would need to do perks on each well, on each lot, yes.
And this whole plan is still to go before planning, right?
Correct. We're opening up our public hearing with them on Monday.
That's it for now.
Carol?
No questions at this time.
Thank you. Is there anybody in the public who would like to speak to this project? Yes, please come forward and identify yourself. Hi, Bob.
Good evening. I'm Bob Brady. I actually own the property across the street. First, I'd like to understand, is it always the jurisdiction of the Conservation Commission if there's a project within a floodplain? Is that, okay, and is it any floodplain or?
On the significance of it, I mean, if it's.
Well, so
if it's something
let's
like-
identify that.
If it's something like this, then yes, any flood zone, whether it's an A zone or a V zone, it would have to come before this commission, yes.
Okay, and this zone is what, X?
No, where it's in pink is within an A zone. up to the,
Okay,
up
and
to the
that
pink line.
elevation is what?
The 15 there? Okay.
Pink is 14? What is blue?
The line is, the elevation is 14, correct. I don't believe, I'd have to check if that line follows the 14 contour exactly. That came from the mapping, from the
GIS?
mapping, correct.
And what's blue?
The blue is the approximate wetland line on the site across.
100 feet?
And the yellow is the 100 foot from that approximate wetland line.
Okay, I just want to be clear. I didn't know that the Conservation Commission had jurisdiction over floodplain. Regardless, I own the marsh across the street. So my greatest concern, of course, is runoff. So not only are we proposing this roadway, but we're going to also add 6 house lots, each of which has roof runoff and drainage needed
And septic.
in order, sorry, what?
And septic.
Well, that goes underground. I'm more concerned about what runs off. If you guys look at your plan and see the topo, the very top of that cul-de-sac is at 20-plus feet, together with down below the road grade at Great Neck Road. So I've reviewed the plans, the engineering, and I'm not clear on how that will absorb, together with the roof runoff, all that water volume that certainly should never come across Great Neck Road and into that marsh. And I speak to this not only because, of course, I own it, but more importantly, the town itself has put in road runoff drainage that drains right onto my property.
Right.
And has caused me what they call vernal pools because of road drainage. Regardless, not important here now, that's history. But the town needs to step up its game as to prevent, whether it's this subdivision or Cranberry Lane or any other subdivision to come along, regardless of where I own, to make certain that freshwater runoff never, ever, ever comes into our marshes. And I implore you all to make certain that that does not happen. And I want to make certain it doesn't happen here, because looking at the engineering, I'm confused as to how what's proposed will absorb that sort of water volume. So I'm hearing before we started, we're continuing because the engineer hasn't addressed this. Well, then this meeting in itself is premature because we don't have our ducks in a line, but this is a perfect example of needing to have our ducks in a line.
Right, so I would say I agree with what you're saying.
Good.
When an application is submitted, we're required to hold a public hearing within so many days, so we don't have the choice of saying we're not going to hold a hearing.
That's too bad.
So, but we are going to wait for the town's engineer to review this, so we have confidence that the drainage is correct, because we don't want to see the same thing that you don't want to see.
Right. Good.
So that is forthcoming, and that's why we can't make a decision at this point in time, because we don't know the answer to what
So you're under pressure by time versus having the ducks in a line.
just to start the hearing, but we don't have to conclude the hearing until we get the information we want, which we're not going to.
Well, I've sat here and I've heard at least 3 or 4 hearings all continued, so I got to wonder why everything is always continued.
That's one of the reasons. 'Cause
All
we
right.
don't have all the information yet.
Good.
So one of the things, like considering the roof runoff, what group says, what approving commission says, you must have dry wells for all the roof runoff? It's something we can't say because it's outside of what we cover.
Well, this
But can
plan
I
is a
ask someone-
subdivision.
Can I ask someone in planning, would they have the say as to whether or not there's roof?
Well, I don't know that you should need to ask. I think the planning board should know that.
I'm hoping that the planning board recognizes they need to handle roof runoff, because we can't say it because it's outside of our privy.
See, I don't know that, all right? I guess I got to go back and read the laws, but regardless, this is an application that's before the town of Wareham, before you and them simultaneously. It
Not
would seem to
uncommon.
me to make sense for there to be some communication between both planning board and the commission to identify all those, if any, issues that should be addressed.
Totally
Here is
understand.
perfectly one of them.
Totally understand.
And
it
whether
should
it's
be
dry
zo-
well or
Zoning should be
containment-
included in that overview.
Well,
that
maybe
all-
so.
Yeah.
Well, as long as it's not outside of zoning purview, and I think this conforms to minimum requirements for zoning, so you don't
I
need to
know,
muddle, you don't
but-
need to muddle it with another board.
I'm saying all three boards should be working together to make sure we are consistent with our interpretation of our bylaws and that the project is done in such a way that it satisfies.
Agreed, I would think that should happen all the time.
We can't keep hugging our trees, we have to look at the forest.
Well, if it's...
Totally,
There you go.
I mean, I totally understand.
Yeah,
And
good.
I plan to go to the planning board and talk about dry wells to make sure we reduce the amount of runoff off this site. As a
I just-
citizen, not as a conservation.
Whatever that runoff may be, I just want to know that those basins are going to consume it before it goes into a storm drain that runs directly into that marsh, which is wrong.
Totally understand,
Totally
thank
wrong.
you.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Thank you.
Okay, we'll continue until the 17th of November.
Motion to
That
continue.
timeframe is-
Yeah, if it's not, not the day of,
This is going to be,
we'll request a continuance.
So a motion to continue to November 17th.
Second.
I have a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, we're continued until the 17th.
Thank you.
We do have a notice for public hearing pursuant to, that's been,
That one's been
Well,
continued,
no,
right?
we need to read it.
I gotta read, okay.
Ask if anybody's here. Sit and ask if anybody's here. Because they might have come in afterwards.
Pursuant to the provisions of the Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act, General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Wareham Wetland Protective Bylaw, Division 6. A public hearing will be held in Room 320, Wareham Multi-Service Center, 48 Marion Road, Wareham, Mass., on Wednesday, November 3rd, 2021, at 6:30 p.m. On the notice of intent for Mark Connolly, care of Cape and Islands Engineering, 800 Falmouth Road, Suite 301C, Mashpee, Mass. 02649, to construct a pier, ramp, and float system located on Assessor's Map 10, Lot 1032B, 69 Great Neck Road, Wareham, Mass.
And I'd like to correct that hearing. It was a map 20, Shell Lane. So that was corrected for the notice in the papers, just it wasn't corrected on the notice we got. I don't know the lot number. I just know it's not. All right, is there anybody here for this hearing? We've been asked to continue it. We are going to continue, so there's no one here of the homeowners to speak to you.
There's somebody
If you
left.
want to speak, please come forward and identify, knowing that,
No,
Okay.
identify.
Can we also enter into the record that Mark Dibb from Cape Engineering is identified as the person asking via email to continue the request? I think that should be noted, and was not done today. Just so it's on record as to who did it and when.
all right? Please identify yourself.
Good evening, I'm Bob Dermody. I live at 8 Shell Lane, so I'm a neighbor to this property. My question is more procedural, vis-à-vis what I just heard there and the prior gentleman. I drove down from Boston for this hearing, and it's now continued. Is there a way I can find that out before I drive down again, please?
You can call me ahead of time to ask, but sometimes we may not even know until late in the day. So
Understood.
just so you understand, we sometimes don't even know till a certain time, but feel free to call ahead of time and I'll give you the best information I have at the time. Or email, whatever's
If it could
easier.
even increase the odds of knowing, that would help. Thank you for your time.
Extension, if you want to write it down, phone number and extension? Did you want to write it down?
I have him I have him on speed dial.
Oh,
Dave and I go way back.
Okay.
It's a little dangerous.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for your service.
Have a good night.
Is there nobody else that we'd ask her to request a continuance until?
Motion to continue the hearing to November 17th.
Second.
I have a motion as second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstain. So, Mr. Burchett, will you do me a favor and make sure you put in everybody's folder the formal request for continuation? In the folder you keep?
In the folder I put, for the file, you mean?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so that's continued. The next one, public hearing continued. We have one for Tech Associates, the Railroad Corridor, as asked for an extension continuance until November 17th.
Motion to continue to November 17th.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstain. The next hearing, continued hearing is Jill Wright, 55 Edgewater Drive. Mr. Madden, I think you're up. Please identify yourself for the record.
Thank you. I'm Bill Madden from JF Engineering here on behalf of Mike and Jill Wright.
Thank you, Mr. Burchett. We'll read to the project.
This is a larger version.
Is this a new one?
No.
Okay.
Everyone.
Anybody need a larger one? You good?
I'm good with this one. Are you good with this one? They have a larger one.
I'd rather have a larger one if they have a,
She'd-
oh, they have a big, huge one.
She'd rather have a larger one.
There you go.
I'm old, I can't see.
I wasn't gonna say that.
Okay, so this site is at 55 Edgewater Drive, and the project involves the installation of a cobble parking area, stone wall, and stairs in the buffer zone to a coastal bank. And this application was in response to a violation that occurred at the site, which involves starting this project without conservation approval. So there was excavation to install a footing and base of the wall that's already been started. The engineered plan indicates the location of the coastal bank line, and a 65-foot stone wall is proposed closer to the road to create a level area for the cobble parking area. And stairs are proposed between the new wall and the existing stone wall that's at the site. The new wall and parking area are only about 10 to 12 feet from the top of the coastal bank. At the last meeting, we had discussed this, and it was described by the engineer that that was already disturbed and used as a parking area. Other disturbed areas that need to be stabilized would be loamed and seeded. And also at the last meeting, I had a question about the dock and the length of what was there versus what was shown on the Chapter 91 plan, and questioned whether or not that float needed to be pushed out deeper based on what was shown or represented on the original plan. Mr. Madden did submit some additional information, which I'll let him sort of address. We did receive a DEP file number on this project. I would recommend approval of the parking area and wall work, but I do still have a question on the pier, so I'd like to hear some explanation on that.
Okay, I'll do the best that I can. I wasn't around, I don't think, well, I was around, but I wasn't involved with the project when the pier was created.
Yeah.
But I think one of the things that I provided with Dave was a copy of the Chapter 91 license, a copy of the plan that accompanies that license, as well as the certificate of compliance that was issued by the Wareham Conservation Commission for the pier that was installed 32 feet or so shorter than what the Chapter 91 license called for on the plan. So in my view, I would believe that that order of conditions that allowed the dock to be built was was signed off on by the commission back in 1990 or 1991, whatever the date was in the document, and I don't think it's really subject to further review. But in any case, you know, Dave was concerned about the water depths and what have you, and just looking back at that Chapter 91 license, it almost appears to me that perhaps that dock was shortened up originally is because there simply is not much water in Crooked River. You know, if we extend ourselves out a little bit, the Chapter 91 license shows that the water depth would be less than a half a foot deeper than what it is now, but it would still be pretty much bottom at low water. So if we were to extend it out, I don't think there's any, I don't think there's really any benefit. It clearly wouldn't meet our regulations for docks and piers in Wareham under the bylaw now. And, you know, I can't see where any positive benefit would result from that. And, you know, I think it complicates matters a little more that a certificate of compliance had already been issued. So those are the only comments that I had. I think that Dave wanted to look at the Chapter 91 license, see what the original plan showed for water. You know, and even out at 95 feet, you know, there's, at low water, there's no water, and it's very shallow. I mean, there's not even a foot of water out there at low tide. In fact, it looks to be 8 or 9 inches or something along those lines. So those are the only comments that I have on the dock. I know that currently, I don't believe they use a boat there. I think they use it predominantly for kayak and canoe launch and things like that. So it works fairly well for them in its current state. I mean, they work around the tide. Obviously, they don't really have a lot of choice. But that's what I uncovered, and that's what I provided what Dave has requested at the prior meeting.
So to your knowledge, it hasn't been altered since it received the COC?
To my knowledge, no, it has not been altered.
Dave, is there an issue with where they're putting the boat? The boat was like kind of shoved in off of the path. I was wondering if that was in wetland where they were keeping the boat?
I don't know that it's per se in the wetlands. It's close to it because the path is close to it, but as long as it's on the path or close to that area, it should be
So the
okay.
boat isn't an issue?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. All right. If we're not talking about the dock right now, we're talking about the request for the stone walls and parking area. Is there any questions on that? Carol?
No questions.
Ron?
I know, I realized that after I started speaking. It's on now. Did we discuss pervious/impervious for this in the last meeting? And I think...
I don't know that we may have, but they're proposing pervious anyway.
Okay.
Yeah, we're proposing cobblestone, open joint cobblestone type of setup.
Okay, then that's it. That was my only concern.
Michael?
No questions, thank you.
Denise?
No questions.
No questions, thank you.
I have no questions. Anybody in the audience want to talk to this project? I'm seeing none.
Motion to close the hearing.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to close the hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstain. The hearing is closed.
Dave, I think we're just doing standard order of conditions on this. There was nothing additional that we talked about.
Well, I would say that there should be conditions to state that the surface needs to be pervious.
Okay.
And that needs to be a continuing condition. And no further increase in terms of the parking area in the future.
In size, okay.
Or the wall, because there's really no need for it at this point.
Okay.
But other than that, standard conditions.
So I make a motion to approve the project with the standard order of conditions, with the additional conditions of not expanding the size of the wall in the future or the parking area, and that it continue to be pervious throughout.
That's the motion.
Second.
I have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained?
Abstain.
Abstained.
I just wasn't here for the last few things, so I just won't vote.
All right. So before they finish the work that they've already started, see Dave for the paperwork.
Okay, we will.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Hey, this is our second one we approved. Wow.
Two done tonight.
Moving right along. Okay, the next continued hearing is Frank Tomatozzi at 3133 Prospect Street. He's asked for a continuation until November 17th. What? Thought I was speaking in the mic. Tomatozzi wants a continuation. Someone want to take that motion?
Motion to continue to November 17th.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained?
Hey, before we move on to the next one, this is in my mind bank, and I think I forgot to ask it. So this work that was being done or fixed over on the last project was in response to work that started previous, right, without our knowledge? Did we ever issue fines for that?
I believe so, but I'll have to double check.
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
Any idea when they came before us?
It initially came before us,
I mean, as a violation?
yeah, that would have been probably a couple months ago anyway.
Yeah, it was a little while back. I just want to make sure for,
I'll
obviously.
double check, and if not, then I would put that out, because I don't necessarily need it to be in the motion for me to do that.
Yeah, just obviously for sake of consistency and just making sure that it's noted. I know we've talked about it, but I didn't know if it was ever issued.
Okay, next one was Gray, 17 Lydia's Island. Is there anybody here for that project? Please come forward and identify yourself.
Hey, good evening, Brian Wallace with JC Engineering.
Mr. Brissette, when we're ready for the paperwork, we'll discuss the project.
How many you want? One more?
Yeah, I guess.
This is a new plan.
Okay. Can you share? Just to the point on Jillian Wright, we had an enforcement order on May 19th, 2021, and I find no notes on fine. But could you double check, Mr. Pichette, on your paperwork?
Will do.
Okay.
Okay, so this project site is at 17 Lydia's Island Road, and the project involves the construction of a pier, ramp, and float system within land under the ocean, within land containing shellfish, salt marsh, coastal beach, and within a coastal flood zone. A 170-foot pier, ramp, and float was proposed out into Shell Point Bay. The proposed pier initially would require 22 pilings to be installed. They have since submitted a revised design for this pier, which moves to a monopile type system, which would reduce the number of pilings needed to support the structure. And I believe that's what you have as, on the revised plan that you're looking at. We did get comments from the harbor master on this project, who initially did not support the project, but did provide some other comments stating that he had spoken about this project with the applicant's engineer and had seen that there'd been some changes to it. So I'm not 100% sure what his status of this is at this point, but I believe he said that he was more okay with the revision than what was originally proposed.
What's the date of that? Last one I think I have is August 2nd.
August 2nd.
Sorry.
yeah.
Last thing I have is August 2nd from Gary. Is there another letter?
I believe he did submit another letter.
See it. Did you see it?
I do have copies of email that I believe
Yeah.
he sent you, as well as the Division of Marine Fisheries that I can pass around copies
Just-
of.
I was wondering whether or not I had the most current one.
This was October 20th, 2021.
Sorry,
That's all right.
sorry I interrupted you.
No, that's
I-
okay. The Mass Division of Marine Fisheries did comment on the project and did have a number of concerns about this project, as they have on some other ones in this area, and stated that the project would have permanent impacts to shellfish habitat and associated fisheries access. And they cited some other concerns, including prop dredging and lack of access to shell fishermen around the new structure. They did submit some additional comments, more or less to add to their comments from before, but they didn't necessarily take back their comments from the initial project. So while I think this is a great design and it's a great alternative to a traditional pier, I still have concerns with the impacts as stated by Mass Division of Marine Fisheries, because they're still going to be similar regardless of whether it's one design or another. We did get a DEP file number on this project, so I'd like to just hear what the applicant has to say and then discuss it from there.
All right, thank you, David. So just to add on some of the changes we've made from the previous revision. So as Dave stated, we switched to a monopile design for this, where each set of piles, rather than consisting of two on either side of the dock, it has one single pile in the center. And this is the case for every pile until you reach the end of the fixed pier, and that's that would still require two piles for stabilization purposes. So that was one major change we made to the site plan to help mitigate some of the environmental impacts to the area and to the shellfish. We also increased the overall length to where the floats would be about 10 feet further out, and we'd have deeper water at that point to address the concern of, shallowness, depth beneath the boat, and that sort of thing. We've also changed the configuration of the floats, and we are proposing to use through-flow decking on the floats as well as the permanent pier itself, and this would allow for more light penetration through the structure. That's also a composite material. So those were two changes we made. And we also will be providing, we mentioned that at the last meeting, water and electric through the pier. We are looking to possibly provide one single light that would be switch controlled. Wouldn't be a photocell or solar powered in that case, and it would also not be shining into the water. It'd be more shining out or upward. So I know that was a concern of one of the commission members last time as we brought that up, but there would be no light shining into the water directly. So I believe that summarizes the major changes we made. We have a letter dated October 15th, which sort of summarizes all of the changes on the plan, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that the commission might have. And sorry, just to add one thing regarding the Division of Marine Fisheries. In their letter that we received last night, November 2nd, they did state that the revised plans do address previous DMF comments regarding the pressure-treated wood by proposing the through flow or equivalent decking, and that we've reduced the number of piles, and that the float extends into deeper water to reduce potential benthic impacts, as they state. I do have copies of that if the members needed one.
Okay. Michael, any questions?
Yeah, again, going back to that electrical power, so that's generated at the, looks like a little further back from the pier, is that correct? I'm just trying to get us all but basically, that's where it is, correct? I'm looking at the dock.
Yeah, that.
It says like existing shed?
Yep,
Is that where it's generated from?
There's, I don't believe it's generator powered, if that's what you're asking. It's powered from the main house, and that's where the electric and water services would run from that shed, which they currently exist there.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Denise?
I'll admit it's a really cool-looking dock. I have issues with the fact that there are already 4 docks in the area. A 5th one has been grandfathered in, so there'll be a 5th one in this small area. The commission's integrity lies on our consistent application of our bylaws, and while each project needs to be evaluated on its own merit, we need to keep an eye on the health and the well-being of the community and the environment. The recreational value of this area is very important, and I feel that this project inhibits and is detrimental to the recreational value of this area, with the number of docks that already exist and the number of docks that we know are coming down the line with being put into applications for this area. Nice dock, but I really...
Thank you. I understand the concerns. I would state that this dock, as designed, does meet all of the regulations set forth in the Wareham wetland bylaws, and we are providing public access per the state's definition of that beneath the pier. There is clearance beneath that for the public. People are fishing, swimming to be able to go.
Nobody's going to go
beneath
under
that.
somebody else's dock to fish. You know that, and I know that.
But they are legally permitted to do so.
Right.
Yep.
Anything else, Denise?
No.
Alyssa?
I think on that side, only if they held a party for everybody in Onset and advertised it so people know that they could go there. It's a very private little cove. It's a beautiful
That's
little
correct.
cove. I feel that adding 10 feet to the length is just more detrimental. You might be in deeper water, but that whole area has become more shallow over the past 10, 20 years. And we are not dredging it at this point. So it's going to be even more shallow out, where you want to put it. Again, like everybody else, gosh, it's such a neat dock, but I am, and I also feel that this is not, Mr. Buckland is not really saying, he said that you had, it doesn't interfere with navigation or mooring systems. It does interfere a little bit with the look of that whole bay area, Shell Point, and that whole area.
Unfortunately, I gave all the copies of that email I had from him, but
That's right.
She has a copy.
I do understand the concerns, and I certainly put a lot into the opinion of the harbor master on what he states would be safe for navigational purposes.
And also for, eelgrass, for shellfish, all of that, and I
Get to your microphone, sweetheart.
Oh, thanks.
Well, I can confirm, we did have an eelgrass survey completed over the summer, and there was none found in the area.
Right.
And again, just looking at what we're trying to do to help some of those
And,
impacts.
and,
Yep.
you know, it looks like it does help, but no, not totally, you know.
Thank you.
Kwame?
I mean, yes, it is a nice looking deck, but I think the only thing is that there's a lot of decks in that surrounding area, and this one here is proposed 40 feet.
171.
Well, from this area, it says 40, right?
40 feet to the next proposed dock.
Right. So it's kind of, it's like you have one here, you have one there. It's like putting sticks everywhere. You look on the top of the topology, and I mean, again, it's just one of the aesthetics is another concern in how people look at things. But that's my only little caveat, and I think I had a little issue with that, but no other questions.
Now, on the old plan, dated July 23rd, there was one float that was 10 by 15. And now we're looking at two floats, one 20 by 6 and the other one 20 by 8. Why did they go to the L-shaped floats as opposed to one that was in line with the dock?
Yeah, that was a way to help a couple things. Separation distance from the next proposed dock, if that were to be built. And then that would also provide better water depth at that point, being able to berth the boat a certain way along that L. So that's the main reason. We did have, it was two 10 by 15 floats, so that was for 300 feet total.
Yep.
Square feet, and then this one is, I believe, 280. I'd have to do the math in my head quickly. 120 by 8 foot float and another 20 by 6 foot float. So that is, I believe, 280 square feet. So it's actually 20 less square feet than what was previously proposed.
So he plans to put on a 30-foot outboard motor, boat with a 30-foot boat with an outboard motor. Will we have a lot of prop wash at low tide?
Well, we did, the reason we extended this structure out even further was to make sure we're meeting the requirements per the wetland bylaw that requires 2 feet of separation from the lowest point of boat to the bottom of the ocean at that point.
And you have float stops being proposed?
We do. We have it at 2 feet. Even though at this point we wouldn't really expect, we do have that water depth at these floats to maintain that 2 feet separation. But we do want to provide these float stops just as an extra measure. Conditions change. There's low tides. And one of the Division of Marine Fisheries comments on their November 2nd letter was that they'd actually recommend 2.5 feet, so we're more than happy to update that accordingly.
And they're saying 1.5 to 1 deck ratio? Is that taken care of?
Is that...
Relationship to height and width? Is that right? 1.5 to 1 is the ratio of height and width?
It is. I think in their comment letter, they pointed out that the statement was made of a height to the deck, not to the lower support structure, which they are saying that's where you should be measuring to, not to the deck level, but to the lower point of the supporting crossboards is
What
what,
should we be measuring to?
according to DMF, the lower portion or the lowest point of the supporting structure of the deck, not the deck boards itself. So in other words, if you have a stringer supporting the deck boards, you measure from the bottom of that, not
As opposed to
deck.
6 inches higher? Okay.
Yeah, it might be a
Now,
8-inch beam. I
is
don't
there
know.
a chance we can get a copy of the latest report from Division Marine Fisheries? I don't have it in my packet.
I think I emailed that.
I do have copies, 5
Yeah,
copies I can pass
Dave
around.
did email the most,
Emailed it to us.
because you didn't read your emails?
Mhm. I try. Thank you.
Well, I don't necessarily like to share, but I do.
I really don't have it. Mike, can you come get this one for me too?
I can't when Dave steals it on me.
Thank you.
No problem.
Well, what is the wish of the committee? Is there anybody here to want to speak for this project? Did I go around?
You skipped this half the table again.
I did.
You did.
Carol? No questions. We're on.
I have questions.
Please.
So, let me comment first. I think it's a really, really cool looking dock system. I'm not gonna lie. It's really nice. But, you know, some of my concerns are the same concerns that DMF brings up. I know it might be compliant with a lot of other things, but, you know, some of the things we have to look at too is, you know, the habitat of, you know, other species. And, you know, clearly, you know, if, you know, DMF is, you know, stating that they have issues with some of the habitat that's there, you know, it makes it hard for us as a commission to decide what's good, what's not good, but we rely on all of these other agencies to comment. The other thing is, I know Mr. Buckminster has sent a supplemental letter saying that all of his concerns were addressed, but didn't necessarily state whether he had a change of position on liking the project or not. He just basically said that they've been addressed and he has no further comment. But my biggest concern goes back to DMF, and, you know, preserving, you know, what we have here in this town. The more we keep adding, the less we're gonna have. And that's my concern is, you know, we have a bunch of docks there now, and there's other proposed projects coming down the line. You know, at what point do we take the beautiful town that we have and just turn it into, I don't want to say a Miami Beach, but, you know, the more we put, it just, you know, I don't want to say the party starts, but I just think that we need to be, you know, cognizant of all of those things. Definitely a difficult decision, but it's tough.
Yeah, I completely understand. You know, I understand, you know, all members kind of feel that same way of what, you know, where would we stop? And I wouldn't say it's necessarily fair to put that all on one project per se. You know, at some towns, I know their bylaws kind of address these concerns. So I would just want to go back to that and state that, you know, this project meets all of the wetland bylaws as currently they exist. And the applicants have taken a lot of measures. They'd certainly be putting in a lot more money into this design to make sure we're mitigating the environment impacts as best we can here. And I do understand, you know, the Division of Marine Fisheries comments. I'd have to reread it, but I do believe they did say that we have addressed some of their comments from their August letter by providing that through flow decking, which does increase light penetration. There's going to be, you know, temporary impacts during the installation of the piles. But again, we're trying to reduce the number of piles, just taking every step we can to do everything within, you know, what the bylaws state, and to, you know, mitigate these impacts.
Just so he knows,
Thank you for coming closer to the microphone.
just so he knows, this is not that we're taking this alone. We have several other docks in that area that are already on the docket, on our docket. So it's not that we're looking at this in isolation and saying, beautiful, but it can't go.
Yeah, I understand. Thank you.
Could I comment?
Please.
Yeah, so just a couple of things. I would say I agree for the most part with Brian, with one exception. So the structure meets the bylaw in a number of respects, but there's one that, in my opinion, it doesn't, which is the issue of the impacts to shellfish habitat. So that is something that's clearly called out in the bylaw, and it specifically states that if the town shellfish constable or the Mass Division of Marine Fisheries state that it's significant shellfish habitat, then that's a reason the commission may deny a project. In the August 9th letter from DMF, it specifically says that while some impacts can be avoided or reduced with best management practices, others are unavoidable and will result in the permanent impacts to shellfish habitat and associated fisheries access. So that's really not something that can be mitigated for, regardless of the type of structure. You can reduce it, but you can't necessarily eliminate it. So that's, I guess, what I would have to say is the situation here. And again, it's nothing personal against these people, or it's just the nature of the area and the type of comments we've received from Division of Marine Fisheries. So I think what Ron was alluding to earlier was cumulative impact. So we have to look at that again as part of our bylaw with regards to this and other sorts of projects that could have increases in cumulative impacts as time goes on. So that's all I wanted to finish with.
As we have 2 continued hearings for docks into the same area. And so far, whatever comments we have received indicates an impact into the shellfish habitat. Then we have a dock in here that's never been licensed in the same area. So it's not as if there is a mooring that already exists for this homeowner to put his boat on. It's just not easy walking to it, it's rowing to it. But the concern we have has to be the impact on our shellfish habitat. Is there anybody here that wants to comment on this project? Please come forward and identify yourself.
Madam Chairwoman, my name is Margaret Gray, 17 Lydia's Island Road. Thank you to you and to the other chairpersons for allowing me to speak on behalf of our proposal. Thank you, Brian, for highlighting the adjustments to the design that we've put forth. Clearly, we moved to this cove because it was and is a very special place that we want to protect as well.
You need to pull the mic forward so that he can hear you.
There you go.
Is that better?
That's better.
Thank you. We moved to Lydia's Island Road about 6 years ago. It was like a secret garden. We loved it from the first time that we drove down the road, and we want to make sure that we're protecting what's there, which may seem odd to you if we're trying to put in a dock. But that was one of the things that we wanted to do from, again, when we bought the house. We plan to live there for the rest of our lives. And we're avid fishermen, and so we use our boat quite often. And having a dock will allow us to utilize our boat and the wonderful area of the cove in Buzzards Bay for many, many years in the future. That's the reason we're trying to put the dock in. We listened carefully to the concerns that you and others shared with us about the dock, and we've done everything that we can to try and put a design together that minimizes impact to the shellfish. We've also reviewed the design with all of our neighbors, and we're trying to minimize impact to them, to sightlines, to spoiling the look of that beautiful cove. And we've tried to put together a design that has the minimum footprint and minimum impact to sightlines, et cetera, for our neighbors. Our neighbors are in favor of the plan. We do have one a letter from the closest abutter to us in favor of the plan, and there are several other neighbors that are willing to provide letters in support of the plan, because we are being so careful in trying to put something together that will also be appropriate for them and not spoil the views that they have. I understand your concerns about how many dock requests are being made. And I, again, share your concern about the impact to the cove. But it's difficult to turn down one person's request when so many others have been approved to date. I also understand your perspective about where do you stop. You've got a difficult decision that you need to make. But I hope that the care that we've taken, the commitment that we've made to our neighborhood, to our neighbors, even continuing to work with the O'Brien property and the new owners there. We're the caretakers down there. We take care of everyone's cottages all winter. It is a special place and a place that we actively take care of day in and day out. And I hope that you'll consider our perspective and the care that we've taken into consideration when ultimately rendering a decision about our proposal.
Has there been any consideration of putting a common dock out there? Because Christofoli is about to put one within 40 feet of you. Has there been anything about, we had people down on, where was it?
Onset. It was in that little cove in Onset.
At the end of
Association.
Silas Point, in which there were two neighbors trying to put each two docks out there, and they got together and got approval for one dock, of which they shared, which was quite a reduction in the impact in the environment. Has there been any consideration with Christofoli, who's trying to get one right next to you?
Actually, that option was discussed early on as a possible option, but we are not direct abutters.
So you wouldn't know where to put the dock on whose property. Because we did turn down a dock down at Over Jordan in the same type of, okay?
Just around the cove from where you are.
Yes.
Probably
One had already been,
aware of it.
one already had a Chapter 91, and they wanted to, and we said no to that one because of the issue over shellfishing impact. And now we have one coming down for Connolly, which is off Shell Lane, another pier right there. Christofoli's another pier right there. So it's,
And as soon as those get the people with
yeah, Mike.
Into your mic.
Well, Bob yells at you or me yells at you. What do you want?
Well, I just wanted to say also that Wareham is not quite on the cutting edge with these docks. In Nantucket, they have passed something that you may not have any new docks. And with no new docks, and the only way docks can be added to and repaired is if they were built before 1975. Because the dock situation got so crazy, you know.
And our concern has to be not just with you and your neighbors, it has to be with other people being able to utilize this area and the recreational impact that these docks are having on this area.
Okay.
And I think that as far as other people, recreational, you know, I knew the O'Briens, and they did not really want anybody on their land for a very, very long time. So it was a very different thing, but it's a special area you have, and it's so beautiful.
I didn't realize their property sold. Any idea?
Well, it's now owned by the
Okay,
the
because I know
conservation group that owns it now.
he was going to,
The Wildlands
It's a
Trust.
wildlife preserve.
yes. What a beautiful piece that is.
Didn't want to give it.
Special,
Didn't
special.
want to give it here. Yeah.
Found the neatest snakes mating on their property, looking at their docks. Oh, neat. Sorry.
Racers.
Yes.
Racers, yeah.
Okay, so we have nothing else. We need an opinion, we need a hearing. We need a decision.
One other thing, too, is,
Continue.
well, what I was going to say is the commission can do a couple of different things. You could close the hearing, and then you would have 21 days to render some sort of a decision. You could close the hearing and make a decision right now. I spoke to Gary recently, and he kind of did want to look at this new Conley Pier and the whole group. And so, you know, I would like to get his view of the overall scenario, but he did have a concern with the number of docks going into the general area. So those are the questions or options that the commission has. If you want to ask for a continuance to evaluate and just give yourself some more time to think, or if the applicant doesn't want to grant any more continuances, then you can close the hearing and just...
So if we close the hearing, we can't take any input from Buckminster?
Not officially, no.
Yeah. Is there any chance he could come meet us at one of these hearings to talk about this? I would love to have Gary's...
Well, he could, I mean, but he's pretty busy too. I mean, we can ask the question, but I can't guarantee what he'll say.
That if he comes to us, we can put him first on the agenda, so he's up at 6:30? I mean, I would like to have Gary come and speak to us, I really would, about this and the other projects that are going on in this bay.
So,
Yeah, as I said, we could ask the question, but, you know, I can't guarantee what
so here's my stance, I guess, you know, and I'm only one of many on this board, is I don't know that it really matters how much time we take to think about it. I mean, to me, in my opinion, is it's black and white. And I'm all for recreational things, don't get me wrong, but you know, if we continue to approve projects with negative comments from the Division of Marine Fisheries, we're doing everybody a disservice, because if we approve this one, what makes us be able to not approve the next one? And it won't ever stop. And unfortunately, you know, we're at the point where there's already so many there that, I mean, we really, really have to start thinking about the impacts.
Total impact.
Of total impact, not just this one project. It's all the projects. You know, it's the ones that are coming down the line. I mean, I'm not going to say that the writing's on the wall for other projects, because I can't speak to those yet because they're not officially before us right now. But what's before us right now, in my opinion, it doesn't matter how long we take to think about it. You know, we can have that extra time. You know, I don't know that, I mean, maybe it would change the minds of other commission members, but I don't think that extra time for myself is going to make me change, you know, whether I vote to approve or not approve.
Right, I just simply wanted to explain the commission's options, but if the commission...
No, I agree, and it's good to know those, but I just don't, you know, I wouldn't want to drag something out to hold hope, you know, just because we have the ability to do that, if we, you know, no matter what way we decide to vote.
Right, anybody else?
I agree with Ron, that at this point, I don't need any more input to evaluate.
All right, someone make a motion.
I make a motion to
Close the hearing.
close the hearing.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Aye.
And I,
Abstained? 610 to closing the hearing. Hearing is closed.
I make a motion to not approve the project based on the comments of the Division of Marine Fisheries and the overall impact that it's going to continue to have on the area. And, you know, it's a tough decision, but I think that it's the right decision to make based on long-term effects.
I second the motion.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Mr. Bichette, do you have, is that a correct motion?
That's fine, yep.
Sandy?
Actually, I'm sorry, I should have said abstained because I just need a little bit more time to digest and see what's in front. I mean, I know what we proposed and what we have, but I don't think I can vote at this time.
So we will, we're going to reconsider the closing of the hearing and someone withdraw their second?
Whoever gave his second.
And someone withdraw their motion?
I'm not withdrawing my second.
I think it's not up for reconsideration. The vote stands 6-1-0.
And you have
To
a
close the
motion,
hearing.
and you have a second motion with a second.
Hmm?
I said, and you have another motion with a second.
Yes.
So that,
The motion was to deny the project, and we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained. Did I hear a proposal?
I said
Yes,
the
so
second
we
part.
have 6-1-0 to deny the project.
Yep.
Sorry, sorry.
Thank you for
Okay,
your
thank you.
consideration.
yep,
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
your service to Wareham.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your words.
Right, there you go. Here's the paperwork.
Because I talked to my brother and he says, you know, if he had a house and his neighbor
Next hearing,
had a
I don't know what this one is. That's an old
That was
one.
from a previous.
Yep.
Have we been asked to continue
All
the
right.
next one?
We now have a request to continue this Christofoli hearing until November 17th.
Motion to continue to November 17th?
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained. We have a request to continue the George Barrett project and hearing until December 1st.
December 1st.
Motion to continue to December 1st.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained. We have a request to continue Wareham MA3 until November 17th.
Motion to continue to November 17th.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained. We have a request to continue Wareham PV1 until November 17th.
Motion to continue to November 17th.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained. Now we have enforcement orders.
This one that I have on the agenda is relative to some work that was done at 28 Winship Ave to install some pilings that were not approved by the commission. I did speak to the owner and was expecting them to be at the meeting tonight. We spoke about the meeting, and they seemed as though they were going to be here. So I don't really have much to say at this stage, other than they're not here. So,
Did we ratify the enforcement orders?
yes.
Okay.
So, it's just a matter of how the commission wants to handle this. Do we want to just take it up at the next agenda, or, bring it to another level with having the town's attorney get involved? Those are some of the options that we have
So,
at the moment.
so I guess maybe get a little understanding of exactly, I know there were some pilings that were done, but what's the backstory on it, if there is any?
There's not per se a backstory, other than they had some pilings put in without any approval from us. We issued an enforcement order saying that, you gotta either file a notice of intent or remove them. They did initially engage an engineer on this, and then through discussion of that, the engineer, I think, basically said, I think you're gonna have to end up removing these things. And then they started discussing this with their attorney, which again, I expected to have some presence here tonight. So that's basically where we are with it.
So they were approached about it. They went to an engineer kind of said that it wouldn't be something that would maybe be approved or what have you. And then you spoke with them, and now they're just not here,
Yes.
essentially. I'm just,
So what do you want to do, Ron?
Now, did you also find a violation with the size of their float? Or is there something else? They have seats, benches on the dock, was that approved?
There's a couple things that I think they were in the process of addressing as a whole, and again, I was expecting to have a discussion here tonight, so I don't really have, unfortunately, a lot of other information to give you at this stage, other than the fact that, you know, we still have this violation that hasn't been addressed.
when was the original notice of violation?
This is another one that's been out there for a couple months at least, yeah.
You've seen
I mean, I think that, you know, we need to start taking a firm stance on these violations. And, you know, some of them have gotten away from not necessarily us sitting on the board. They could have been sitting around for a while, but I think we need to start taking a firm stance and move forward with whatever the next level of action is, whether it's the attorney getting them served officially by a constable, whatever it might be. I think the next step should be taken so that we can start getting a hold of these issues so that they don't continue to pile up.
Is it possible to give them a chance to come to the next meeting with the understanding that if they don't show up to that meeting, we start to find them on a daily basis?
That's certainly an option, and at the same time, I can also, you know, I would say I should inquire with the town attorney and just see what the
Exactly
steps
what
would
we
be.
could
So
do.
that way, when we get to the next meeting, if nobody comes, then we're in a position to take those
Yeah, so
actions.
getting the foundation laid to understand what our next step would be, so maybe that is approaching.
Okay, for the record, they were on the June 16th, 2021 agenda and a no-show.
So this isn't the first time, so we're almost going on 5 months.
Wow. It's been a while, yeah.
And-
Geez, I'm losing track of the months here, they're going by
And,
so fast.
and you said they were a no-show at the last?
I have no comments on my agenda indicating any discussion or action taken on it, so.
So I think, yeah, if we approach the attorney and just talk about what it is and, you know, reach out to them again and say, this is where we're at and this is what's gonna happen, and go from there and make a further decision at the next meeting.
Okay.
Dave, what would you like to do?
I think pretty much what I said is what I'd like to do. I would like to, you know, just get a sense from the town attorney what to do at this stage. And as Denise said, if we don't get any presents, then there needs to be some fines handed out.
Right, on it,
I mean, like you said, this is based on the notes, the second time that
right.
we've tried to have them
They've
before
been
us.
fined for the first time?
There was nobody here.
So they're
So
basically never here.
they've not been fined at all?
No.
They're basically never here, in other words.
They never
we
showed
send
up
to
to
the
the
them a
first
letter?
one.
Not to this point, so let me check, because there could have been some circumstance that came up where, I don't know, they couldn't
Okay.
get here, but at least they will know what the next step is going to be if there's no discussion at the next meeting.
Dave, on a related subject, but not exactly, is these railroad ties, are those something that you allow to be placed routinely, you know, near the water or on the water?
I'm not sure what you're asking. You mean if somebody wants to build a seawall or something?
Yeah,
or-
and they have,
Treated
it's
wood.
sort of like the ones at the end of, in Little Harbor. They put the stones were there, and then they had railroad tie stairs.
So for anything new, you wouldn't be able to use creosote railroad ties.
That's the question. That
That's
was my
prohibited, you know. There are circumstances where you could use, you know, current pressure-treated railroad ties for retaining walls on your property, but not typically for a seawall. You know, that's not something
Okay.
you normally would
Yeah.
see because it's not a design that would hold up to the coastal environment typically. So, but to answer your question, if you're asking about the creosote material, that would not be
It doesn't
allowed
permit
anywhere.
Anymore.
Yeah. I don't even think you can find that stuff anywhere.
Okay. Certification of compliances.
The first one was a discussion we had about the property on 15 Kennedy Street, and members were going to go take a look at that, and I was actually supposed to try to arrange a meeting with the owners to get there. Honestly, with the storm and things, I just never got to the point of meeting with them to go over it. So I would like to just hold off on that one until the next meeting.
I did go over there between two storms. I found no puddles there. The ground was wet, but I didn't find flooding that I expected. The land is up against a brook, so there is water right there.
We had really a puddle in the middle of the lawn when I went.
After the nor'easter?
It was
We
on
were there on
Tuesday, Monday
Monday we were there.
afternoon,
I went
sunny
there
day.
before that storm and there was no puddle.
Puddle in the backyard, a bowl, sort of gives you that bowl shape
Yep.
Yeah.
in the backyard.
I wonder who didn't have a puddle after that last storm.
Well, the backyard was really wet.
But if we say it is wetland and not allowed to be mowed, I think you take a look, Dave, what you find for it. I found moss in the grass,
Well,
but I
yeah.
had standing water in my backyard.
The initial plan represents it as being wet in a portion of it, and that's why I want to just meet with them to find out how it ended up coming to be the way it currently is.
Because if it was,
Before
if it
making,
was, it was wetland, it was designated wetland, would they even be allowed to mow it like they're mowing it?
No,
no.
And they're in the process of trying to sell the house. That's why
Yes.
this issue has come up.
and this is a good 50% of their backyard.
Oh, yeah,
And
you're
it's,
right.
it's all wet back in there. Oh,
Got it.
come on. You're worse than my
Little more,
physical
more.
therapist.
So as I said, I would like to not take an action on that until the next meeting.
Okay.
The next one is for a project at 41 Riverside Drive, which involved the reconstruction of a home. This is over in Onset. That project has been completed, so I would recommend the issuance of the certificate of compliance for that project.
Can I hear a so moved?
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
And a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstain. I think that does it. Before we close, Dave, is there any follow-up on the tree removal on Onset Ave?
No, not at this point. I need to check back and see if there's been anything further in terms of what
But
the...
it's been turned over to the police, right?
Yes, they have been there. I met with them there. And they have created a report for that, and we're going to do some investigating on that, but I have not heard anything further on it.
The trees are still down, if anybody wants to take a look over the banking to see the scope of the disaster there.
We can get fingerprints.
It's hard to believe there isn't someone on Onset Ave that has a camera
It's got to be somebody.
with all the rings and
I
things.
mean, it's got to be, somebody
Well,
out there.
anyway. Anyway, is there anything else?
Do we need to discuss anything from this BERE LLC thing? I mean, we got that letter, I read through it, there's some stuff that's incorrect in it. I mean,
Well,
how does that all get handled?
Which one is that one, our newest lawsuit?
That's the newest one. That's the one that we just recently denied.
That's the one over
The one at
Cranberry-
Carver.
That's the one over the
One that-
Cranberry Bogs.
Yes.
Right. So
Dual use.
what's going to happen now is that the Department of Environmental Protection will schedule a site visit, and that's an opportunity for members, myself, whoever else would want to have an interest to go to that meeting, discuss the issues. The applicant will discuss their letter, and there'll be a chance to rebut that letter.
Okay.
And then DEP won't make any decisions at that meeting. They'll just take in information, and then they'll come back with a decision several weeks, or however long it takes them to put that out. But it is the opportunity to address that. You can also put comments in writing and send it to DEP ahead of time with the file number, and of course, that way they'll incorporate it into the information that they have. I have some comments to make too, because there's some things in there that I didn't find accurate.
Yeah, there's a lot.
Yeah, there was
There's some, but this is why
definitely
I'm thinking that during these meetings, it's important for us to state that who continues the meeting, who requested it, and why it was continued, because it makes it sound like we just kept pushing it off, and we were the ones who were just continuing.
But we have tapes for that.
No, we don't have minutes, and we need minutes
No, he
in
said
order
tape.
to.
We have tapes for that, so we can go back
Meaning the video.
to all, we have videos.
People gonna sit down and look at a video, they're gonna wanna see minutes, they're not gonna wanna see a video.
Well, we can easily go back to every
Well, then we
time they
need
were
to,
on the
because-
agenda
Yeah.
to figure out why. I mean, so we do have our, we have our bases covered because there's video of why, and
So we can go to each meeting and say, no one showed, no one showed.
no one showed, or it was
Correct, and I've
continued
got-
because of this.
and
or it
that's
was-
what I
On top of
have,
that,
the
but
dates
on
and
top of
stuff.
that, can't you say, well, let's see, they were on, say, approximately from, say, 6:45 to 7 o'clock, boom, go to that point in the video, because they were certainly not on at, say, 8:30 at night, right?
We can,
Right.
well, we can, I mean, we just have to go through and take the time if it's necessary.
All right.
You know, I mean, and maybe it will be necessary because of what they said, and that, you know, we didn't make a decision and we continued a bunch of times, so maybe we do have to do a little bit of legwork.
Some of the continuances too were because they requested them, you know, and
Right.
so
They're
we
the
have,
ones-
we have.
Denise
I
wants
think-
that in the record.
I think it needs to
Right,
be in the
and
record.
that's fine. The other thing to understand too, anytime we get an appeal on something, whatever it is, the attorney or whoever's making the appeal is gonna throw everything in the world in their appeal.
Correct.
So whether it's 100% correct or not, they have to make statements because they want to refute the decision that was
Well,
made.
yeah,
So-
because I think one of the things that was brought up was the fact that Elisa wasn't at the very first onset hearing or something like that, but
On the June 6th.
But
on the-
that doesn't matter as long as you've had the ability to go back and, if I read that correctly.
But there was no discussion that night.
Saying I had gone through all of the videos and all of the notes from the meeting, so I didn't certify.
Well, that's something I'm going to check into as well, just to see what the details are on that. So we'll.
There also was no discussion that night also on June 2nd, so there'd be nothing for her to certify that she listened to.
I just have a question. Hi. I just have a comment with Bob Braden and his concern about getting,
That's
with
two
Bob
strikes.
Raymond, because I think he is absolutely right. I think people are looking at this road of Great Neck Road and thinking that there's no connection
Bob
with
Brady,
these.
you mean?
Bob Brady.
Yeah, Bob
right,
Brady.
Right,
Yeah.
Brady,
The
excuse me.
neighbor.
Yeah.
Yeah, and, you know, it's really an issue, and it's an issue in bad weather and so on, and
It does get pretty nasty over there.
it's very nasty.
And it's,
We like it
we
that
have
way.
the issue with our 3,500 storm drains all over the town.
We
They're
do.
not
Yeah.
being-
So why do we want to build 6 more houses, which are going to contribute to that issue? Why shouldn't these house people have to do their own, you know, clean them out or whatever? I mean, he didn't give me a satisfactory
Well, I mean,
answer.
I think we're preemptively talking about it because, I mean, the project could very well never be approved. I mean,
Right, well,
there's-
I just,
Or it could be approved with these things
We
addressed.
really need
So,
to discuss
yeah.
this when the hearing is open on it, as opposed, this is,
it's too far.
it's
Fine.
should have been discussed when we were having open the hearing and discussing.
Well, I started and,
Point what, but I asked, are we talking about part of the road, or are we talking about the housing project? And my understanding was it was just the
It's just,
road.
we're just talking about the road right now.
Just
That's
talking about
nothing
the
else.
road.
the road, but the road is what supports, it's
then I
like the
think-
support for the,
And
kind of
comments
agree,
need
but-
to be made to the planning board who have to approve the project. Your
to a
comments are
planning
well put, but to the wrong board. All right?
Motion to close the
I
hearing.
have a motion to Adjourn the meeting.
Sorry. See, yeah, we were talking about so many things.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
I'll say aye.
Thank you very much, everybody. Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.